In this video, I'm gonna show you my top 10 shortcuts in Mario Kart World. This game is littered with shortcuts that have so much depth and game-changing implications. Every shortcut you see today has an impact on the track that is incomparable to almost every shortcut in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That game did have some really cool shortcuts, and some of them have a lot of depth to them, but most shortcuts pale in comparison to the shortcuts in Mario Kart World. You'll see how in this video. So with that said, without further ado, let's start giving her, bud. Starting off my list at number 10 is the opening rail shortcut on Guy Bazaar. You can pull off this shortcut on every single lap, and while it's not the hardest or flashiest shortcut in the world, it does leave a significant impact on the race. That's because this shortcut saves a lot of time over taking the normal path, and in an online setting, it's pretty challenging. On lap 1, you have to worry about everyone attempting this shortcut. You'll definitely have the hardest time making this shortcut on lap 1, and on laps 2 and 3, you not only have to make sure you get on the rail, but you also have to make sure you're not setting yourself up to get hit by items either sitting or traveling on the rail. These factors add a lot more depth to this shortcut than what meets the eye. It makes this track a very strong front-running track because if you're taking this shortcut in first place, you can trap the rail with bananas or chuck green shells back on the rail to land easy hits and build a breakaway. So overall, while this shortcut isn't that special on paper, the way it impacts online races adds a lot of depth to the shortcut, and that's why it's number 10 on my list. Coming in at number 9 is the opening rail sequence on Airship Fortress. This is another shortcut you can pull off every single lap, and it looks really cool, especially when pulling off the rail switch, the double trick on the incline, and the second to last trick on the red rail. This may look like a flashy shortcut, but it's a very easy shortcut that anyone can learn. What makes it significant, much like Guy Bazaar, is how it impacts the race. If you survive the rail shortcut on lap 1, odds are you're going to be in the very front, as a lot of people are going to get bumped off the rail. And considering the only shroom shortcut on this track is a tiny one at the very end, albeit you can use it in combination with a charge jump to get on the rail early, this is a very strong front-running track. Being in first place is your best case scenario, as once again, you can use bananas and green shells to take out your competition on the rails. It's very easy to build a breakaway, and that's what adds so much depth to this shortcut. It's one of the best shortcuts in the game, hence why it's number 9. Additionally, if a track has two shortcuts that are close enough to each other, I'm going to be combining them on this list. So landing at number 8 are the Wario Shipyard shortcuts. The first shortcut involves charge jumping off the ramp, then tricking off the tree, then tricking off the inner wall to make the opening shortcut shroomless. The second shortcut involves charge jumping onto this rail, then tricking off another tree. If you have a mushroom or any other boost item, you can also segue into taking this off-road shortcut. These two shortcuts, especially when combined with the janky water physics, makes Wario Shipyard one of the most skill-based tracks in the game. You need to be mindful of the tide as you approach the second shortcut. If you can find a wave close enough to the rail, charge jump off the wave. Otherwise, charge jump as close as possible to the rail. Additionally, if you pull a feather, which can be pulled in first place, you can use the feather to cut off the off-road after the second shortcut. These shortcuts turn this track from an obnoxious water track into a really technical and skill-based track. If you can't pull off these shortcuts, you're simply going to lose to those who can. The water is still pretty annoying though, so I can't give the second shortcut too much credit. Either way, these shortcuts are still very epic, which is why they take the number 8 spot. Coming in at number 7 is the Whistle Stop Summit ending shroomless shortcut. This shortcut is one of the coolest shortcuts in the game and saves a lot of time, but it is also one of the most challenging shortcuts in the game. I can sit here and say that I've only made this shortcut twice, albeit if you fail the shortcut, you'll almost never be at risk of falling off or losing too much time. And that's what makes this shortcut special. It's the definition of no risk, high reward. I can only imagine how rewarding it is to put a lot of practice into this shortcut, because if you can pull this off online, you'll be able to build a big breakaway. Like I said, this shortcut is very hard. However, there is a method to the shortcut that is significantly easier, and that includes the feather. Nearing the edge of the yellow rail, you can combine a right trick with the feather and easily wall trick onto the rail to complete the shroomless shortcut. This makes being in first place really valuable, because if you pull the feather, you're basically guaranteed to make the shortcut and build a bigger lead. This shortcut is really complex, very challenging, with low risk and very high reward, and you can do it easily with the feather. That's why it's number 7. At number 6, we got 2 shroomless shortcuts on Acorn Heights. The first shortcut has a lot more depth to it than what meets the eye, and I'm gonna get into that shortly. At the surface, it's a really cool shortcut that saves some really good time. And right after is the ending vine shortcut, which involves tricking from vine to cut off the final turns of the track and finish the lap in style. The ending shortcut has quite a bit of depth to it because you need to be mindful of any items you may have to deal with on the vines. This makes being in first place especially compelling as you'll be the ones throwing the items back on the vines. This shortcut is super satisfying, saves a lot of time, and makes front running very strong. But now it's time to talk about the first shortcut because there's a lot to unpack here. This is the only shortcut in the game where your coin count heavily influences your approach to this shortcut. Let's say you attack this shortcut normally, holding A and shake tricking each time you're rejected by the wall. If you have between 0 and 4 coins, you'll make this shortcut every time. If you have between 5 and 10 coins, you can still make the shortcut, but it's a little inconsistent, especially the closer you are to 10 coins. And if you have at least 11 coins, this shortcut is next to impossible. However, there is a workaround. Shortly before the wall rejects you for the first time, hold both the A and B buttons. This will cause you to take this shortcut a little bit more slowly, so you can easily land the second trick onto the wall to make this shortcut. With the braking method, you can even make this shortcut with as high as 20 coins, which would otherwise be impossible. The coin dynamic makes this shortcut the most interesting shortcut in the game, and if your competition doesn't know about this technique and avoids the shroomless shortcut as a result of having too many coins, that could get you some more wins. These two shortcuts combined make this track one of the most skill-based tracks in the whole game, and that's why they take the number 6 spot. Starting off the top 5 are the 2 signature shortcuts of Great Question Block Ruins. The first shortcut can only be done with a mushroom, and at first is only cutting through the grass, but it quickly turns from a simple grass shortcut into a double rail shortcut to take the first half of the S turn as tight as possible. You can also take the second rail shroomless by charge jumping off this ramp and onto the rail. The second shortcut can be completely done shroomless. You can either perform a charge jump or mini turbo trick onto the hula hoop, then attack the wall, or you can take this right rail, trick off the pole, then combine your trick boost with a regular trick off the track and onto the hula hoop. These two shortcuts are pretty damn awesome on their own, but when combined together, they completely define this track. High-level races on Great Question Block Ruins completely revolve around these shortcuts, especially the first one. The best strategy on this track is to get 2 really good items early, with one of them being triple shrooms, and take full advantage of the first shortcut as well as the ending shortcut if it makes sense. This strategy also makes the second shortcut much more impactful. That's because if you don't need another item, you can take the second shortcut and save a lot of time over those who do need items from the last set. These two shortcuts have so much depth that they completely shape the play style of this track, and that's why they land at number 5. Coming in at number 4 are the 2 shortcuts on the first half of Salty Speedway. This combination of shortcuts not only looks really cool and is super satisfying to pull off, but it's so incredibly useful for building a lead on this track. On top of that, both shortcuts are pretty challenging, so if you're consistent at them, you can build a lead and win more races. Add to this that you can pull a feather in first place. The feather isn't useful in pulling off these shortcuts, but these shortcuts are a very reliable way to get you in the first place, and if you pull a feather, you can take the ending shortcut like this. We're not focusing on this shortcut, but my point is that getting in the first place thanks to the first 2 shortcuts can grant you opportunities to do this. Another huge reason why these 2 shortcuts are so high on my list is because of how they've evolved the track. Salty Speedway used to be one of my least favorite tracks in the game, but thanks to these shortcuts, it's quite the opposite. I love this track now, and it's all thanks to these 2 shortcuts. They provide a very reliable path to first place, especially if you're consistent at them, and they genuinely make the track fun. It's for these reasons that these 2 shortcuts on Salty Speedway land at number 4. Before we get into my top 3, I want to give honorable mentions to 3 awesome shortcuts. First up is this insane shortcut on Guy Bazaar. By combining a charge jump with the boost ramp, you can completely cut off the first half of the S turn. That's pretty awesome, although it is very hard. Next up is the Toad's Factory shroomless shortcut. This shortcut feels super satisfying to pull off, and considering the lake shortcut isn't present in this game, this is a very welcome replacement that I enjoy pulling off every single single race. And finally, we got the huge Moo Moo Meadows shortcut, which involves charge jumping into a trick off the tree to cut off an insane amount of off-road with the use of only one mushroom. That's awesome. If any other shortcut was gonna make this list, it would have been this one. But with that said, let's get into my top 3 shortcuts in Mario Kart World. Kicking off the podium at number 3 is not 1, not 2, but 3 shortcuts on DK Pass, and all 3 can be done shroomless. The first shortcut involves riding the wall and tricking into the snow. Even without the immediate use of a mushroom, which would ironically be a bit slower, this saves a lot of time over going around. Then you immediately segue right into the second shortcut by riding the inner wall and tricking back onto the track. And finally, there's the third shortcut, where you take full advantage of the 2 trees to the left to cut off this turn very quickly and take this small shortcut shroomless. So yeah, there's a lot of shortcuts on DK Pass, and these shortcuts completely reshape this track. Like Salty Speedway, this used to be one of my least favorite tracks in the game, but now it's one of my favorite. Considering how many shroom shortcuts there are on this track thanks to the heavy snow, you'd think this would be a bagging track. Ironically, this is one of the strongest front-running tracks in the game thanks to these 3 shortcuts. These shortcuts take the number 3 spot because they've caused DK Pass to have the biggest glow up in this game. From a track that everyone thought was going to be a frustrating bagging track to one of the most technically advanced front-running tracks in the game. It's undeniable how skill-based this track has become, and that's why these 3 DK Pass shortcuts are number 3 on my list.
Wario, the legend.
My runner-ups are the 2 shortcuts on Wario Stadium. This first shortcut is one of the most satisfying shortcuts to pull off in the game. It'll give you an adrenaline rush from start to finish, and as you can tell, it saves a lot of time and is very rewarding to pull off. However, if you're not in first place, you do need to be mindful of items being thrown on the rails, as they can really mess up your race if you get hit at the wrong time. Once again, this makes being in first place very powerful. The second shortcut has a little bit less to it on paper, but there is something very intriguing about it. The easiest way to pull it off is with a mushroom. Unless you have a terrible alignment, you'll never fail this shortcut, and it saves a lot of time. You can also pull off this shortcut shroomless. However, it's much harder, and if you fail, you're gonna be in a really rough spot. This could make you feel like this shortcut is not worth going for. However, in races, it's actually easier than it looks. That's thanks to this coin, the best coin in Mario Kart World. Coins give you a tiny boost forward that is mostly unnoticeable, but in the context of this shortcut, it's everything. As long as you have the right alignment, performing the charge jump as you collect the coin will give you the boost you need to make this shortcut with ease. Ever since I learned how useful the coin is at making the shortcut shroomless, I've never failed it. You can really exploit this online right now, as most people will never take this shortcut unless they have a mushroom. Putting it all together, these 2 shortcuts really make this track special. It's one of the most technical tracks in the game, and if you can master these 2 shortcuts, especially the second shortcut shroomless, you'll have a big advantage over your competition. And that's why these 2 Wario Stadium shortcuts are the runner-ups. Let's be real. No shortcut or combination of shortcuts was going to beat this. The best shortcuts in Mario Kart World are the 2 shroomless shortcuts on Bowser's Castle. The first shortcut is hands down the most important shortcut to learn in the whole game. You save roughly 3 seconds if you make this shortcut, and if you fail, you barely lose any time over those going around the cut. As you'll see, there are multiple ways to take this shortcut. The rail method, while it may look flashy, is actually the easiest and most consistent method to this shortcut. With enough practice, you'll almost never fail it. The second most common method is the charge jump method. It's faster than the rail method, but it's much harder. Unless you know the rail is blocked, I wouldn't go for this online. However, there is also the new world record method, which involves a combination of the previous 2 methods. Charge jumping onto the right wall and tricking onto the arrow to get a nice launch forward. This is definitely harder than the rail method, but I'd argue it's easier than the method where you exclusively charge jump. Like I said, this is the most important shortcut shortcut to learn in the whole game. So regardless of how you pull it off, you need to be going for it every chance you can. The second shortcut, while not as important, still adds a lot of depth to this track. By tricking off this inner wall and spamming right tricks, you can cut off the turn after the glider completely shroomless. It saves a lot of time too. It's not the craziest shortcut on its own, but when combined with the first shortcut, it makes Bowser's Castle the most front run heavy track in the game. If there's any track you should practice, it's this one. These shortcuts completely define Bowser's Castle and make it a front running paradise. There's no debate. This is the best combination of shortcuts in Mario Kart World. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments what your favorite shortcuts in this game are and if you learned about any shortcuts in this video. For the longest time, Mario Kart Wii was the game defined by its shortcuts. No other Mario Kart game truly compared, but Mario Kart World has really proven to be a game with some of the craziest shortcuts in Mario Kart history. These shortcuts have so much depth to them, and I'm really excited to see what kind of shortcuts get unveiled in the future. With that said, until next time, thank you all so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic day and keep on giving her, bud.